anyone at all. And when Jacob came and sought her, she said to him, I am not clean for you, since I have become polluted for you, because Reuben has defiled me and lay with me at night. But I was sleeping, and I was unaware until he had uncovered my skirt and lain with me. And Jacob was very angry with Reuben, because he had lain over his father's robe, because that is defilement. They shall certainly die together, the man who lies with his father's wife, also the wife, because they have made a defilement upon the earth. And there shall be no defilement before our God among the people whom he has chosen for himself as a possession. And again it is written a second time, Let anyone who lies with his father's wife be cursed, because he has uncovered his father's shame. And all of the holy ones of the Lord, and you, Moses, command the children of Israel, and let them keep this word, because it is a judgment worthy of death, and it is a defilement. And there is no forgiveness in order to atone for a man who has done this forever, but only to execute him and kill him and stone him, and to uproot him from the midst of the people of our God. For any man who does this in Israel should not have life for a single day upon the earth, because he is despicable and polluted. And let them not say, Reuben had life and forgiveness after he lay with his father's concubine, and while she had a husband, and while her husband Jacob his father was alive. For the ordinance and judgment of the law had not been revealed till then, as completed for everyone. But in your days it is like the law of appointed times and days, and an eternal law for everlasting generations. And this law has no consummation of days, and also there is no forgiveness for it, but only that both of them should be uprooted from the midst of the people. On the day when they have done this, they shall be killed. And you, Moses, write for Israel, and let them keep this, and let them do according to these words, and let them not do nothing which appears, which is as defiled as this among the holy people. And in the 3rd year of this 6th week it came to pass, as Jacob and all his sons were traveling, that they dwelt at the house of Abraham near Isaac his father, and Rebekah his mother. And these are the names of the children of Jacob, his firstborn, Reuben, and Simeon, and Levi, and Judah, and Issachar, and Zebulun, the sons of Leah. And the sons of Rachel are Joseph and Benjamin, and the sons of Bilhah are Dan and Naphtali, and the sons of Zilpah are Gad and Asher. And Dinah is the daughter of Leah, the only daughter of Jacob. And when they came, they bowed down to Rebekah and Isaac. And when they saw them, they blessed Jacob and all of his sons. And Isaac rejoiced greatly because he saw the sons of Jacob, his younger son, and he blessed them. And in the 6th year of this week, from the 44th Jubilee, Jacob sent his sons with their servants to pasture their sheep in the field of Shechem. And while hiding themselves under the trees, 7 kings of the Amorites assembled themselves to fight against them and to plunder their animals. And Jacob and Levi and Judah and Joseph were at home with Isaac their father, because his soul grieved him, and they were unable to leave him. And Benjamin was the youngest, and therefore he dwelt with his father. And the kings of Taphu, and the kings of Aresa, and the kings of Seragan, and the kings of Silo, and the kings of Gaas, and the kings of Bethron, and the king of Maanisakar, and all those who dwelt in that mountain, who dwelt in the woods of the land of Canaan, came. And they reported it to Jacob, saying that, Behold, the kings of the Amorites have surrounded your sons, and they have plundered their herds. And he and his 3 sons, and all of his father's servants, and his servants arose from his house, and went against them with 6,000 men, who carried swords. And he killed them in the field of Shechem. And he pursued those who fled, and killed them with the edge of the sword. And he killed Aresa, and Taphu, and Seragan, and Selo, and Manasseh-Kar, and Galas, and he collected his herds, and he prevailed over them, and decreed a tribute against them, so that they might give a tribute of 5 of the fruits of their land. And he built Robel and Tamnatares, and he returned peacefully, and he made peace with them, and they became servants to him until the day he and his sons went down into Egypt. And in the 7th year of this week he sent Joseph from his house to the land of Shechem, in order that he might know about the welfare of his brothers. And he found them in the land of Dothan, and they acted fraudulently, and made a plot against him to kill him. But they repented and sold him to a band of Ishmaelites. And they took him down to Egypt and sold him to Potiphar, a eunuch of Pharaoh, to the priest of the city of Heliopolis. And the sons of Jacob slaughtered a kid and dipped Joseph's garment into the blood and sent it to Jacob, their father, on the 10th of the 7th month. And he lamented all of that night because they had brought it to him in the evening. And he became feverish and lamenting his death, and said that a cruel beast has eaten Joseph. And all of the men of his house lamented with him on that day. And it happened as they were mourning and lamenting with him all of that day, that his sons and his daughter rose up to comfort him. But he was not comforted concerning his son. And on that day Bilhah heard that Joseph had perished, and she died while mourning for him. And she was dwelling in Kaphrateph. And Dinah his daughter also died after Joseph perished. And these three lamentations came upon Israel in a single month. And they buried Bilhah opposite the tomb of Rachel. And they also buried Dinah his daughter there. And it happened as they lamented for Joseph 1 year, that he was not consoled, but he said, I will go down to the grave lamenting for my son. Therefore it is decreed for the children of Israel that they mourn on the 10th day of the 7th month, and on the day when that which caused him to weep for Joseph came to Jacob his father, so that they might atone for themselves with a young kid on the 10th day of the 7th month, once a year on account of their sin, because they caused the affection of their father to grieve for Joseph his son. And this day is decreed so that they might mourn on it, on account of their sins, and on account of their transgressions, and on account of all their errors, in order to purify themselves on this day once a year. The wife of Judah was Betasuel, a Canaanite, and the name of the wife of Issachar was Hesakah, and the name of the wife of Zebulun was Neeman, and the name of the wife of Dan was Eglah, and the name of the wife of Naphtali was Rasu'u, who was a Mesopotamian, and the name of the wife of Gad was Makkah, and the name of the wife of Asher was Ionah, and the name of the wife of Joseph was Asenath, an Egyptian, and the name of the wife of Benjamin was Iyasaka. And Simeon repented and took another wife from Mesopotamia, as his brothers had. And in the first year of the first week, in this 45th Jubilee, Rebekah called to Jacob her son, and she commanded him with regard to his father and brother that he should honor them all the days of Jacob's life. And Jacob said, I will do everything just as you have commanded me, because... And Jacob said, I will do everything just as you have commanded me, because this thing is an honor and a greatness for me, and a righteousness for me before the Lord, that I should honor them. And you, mother, know from this day, the day I was born, until this day, all of my deeds and everything which is in my heart, that I always think of good for everyone. And why would I not do this thing which you have commanded me, that I should honor my father? And why not do this thing which you have commanded me, that I should honor my father and my brother? Tell me, mother, what perversity you have seen against me, and I will withdraw from it, and mercy will be upon me. And she said, My son, all my days I have never seen against you anything perverse, but only uprightness. But I will rightly tell you, my son, that I shall die within this year, and I shall not pass through this year alive, because I have seen in a dream the day of my death, and I shall not live more than 155 years. And behold, I have completed all the days of my life which I will live. And Jacob laughed about his mother's words, because his mother said that she would die. But she was sitting opposite him, and her strength was in her, and she was not suffering loss of strength, because she was coming and going, and seeing clearly, and her teeth were sound, and no disease had touched her all the days of her life. And Jacob said, I would be happy, mother, if my days approached the days of your life, and my powers were thus in me as your powers. And you will not die, because you have spoken to me in idle jest concerning your death. And she went in to Isaac, and she said to him, One request I beg of you, make Esau swear that he will not harm Jacob, and I will not pursue him hostilely, because you know Esau's inclination, that it has been evil since his youth, and there is no goodness in him, because he wants to kill him after your death. And you know everything that he has done from the day that Jacob his brother traveled to Haran until this day, that he abandoned us with all his heart and did evil with us. He gathered your flocks and robbed all of your possessions before your face. And while we were begging and asking for what was ours, he acted like a man who was taking pity on us. And he is bitter against you because you blessed Jacob, your perfect and upright son, because he has no evil, but only goodness. And since he came from Haran until this day, he has not been depriving us of anything, for he has always been bringing us everything in its season. And he rejoices with his whole heart whenever we accept anything from his hand. And he has been blessing us and has not separated from us since he came from Haran until this day. But he has been dwelling with us continually at home, honoring us. And Isaac said to her, I know and see the deeds of Jacob, who was with us, and with all his heart he is honoring us. And I first loved Esau more than Jacob, because he was born first. And now I love Jacob more than Esau, because he has increasingly made his deeds evil. And he has no righteousness, because all of his ways are injustice and violence, and he has no righteousness around him. And now my heart is vexed on account of all his deeds. And neither he nor his seed is to be saved, for they will be destroyed from the earth, and they will be uprooted from under the heavens, since he has forsaken the God of Abraham, and he has gone after his wives and their defilement, and after their errors, both he and his sons. And you say to everything which you say to me, and I will not refuse your request. And she said to him, I ask of you on the day when I die that you bring me and bury me near Sarah, your father's mother, and that you and Jacob love one another, and that one will not seek evil for his brother, but only love him. And you will prosper, my sons, and be honored in the midst of the earth, and the enemy will not rejoice over you, and you will become a blessing and a mercy in the sight of all those who love you. And he said, I shall do everything which you have said concerning me, and I shall bury you on the day when you die near Sarah, my father's mother, just as you have desired, so that your bones will be near her bones, And Jacob, my brother, I shall love more than all flesh, and I have no brother in all the earth except him alone. And this is not a great thing for me if I love him, because he is my brother, and together we were sown in your belly, and together we came forth from your womb. And if I do not love my brother, whom shall I love? But I beg of you only that you admonish Jacob concerning my sons, because I know that he will certainly rule over me and my sons, because on the day my father blessed him, he set him above and me beneath. And I swear to you that I will love him, and that I will not seek evil for him all the days of my life, but only good. And he swore to her concerning all of these matters. And she called Jacob in the sight of Esau, and she commanded him according to what she had spoken with Esau. And he said, I will do your pleasure. Trust me that evil will not proceed from me or my sons against Esau, and I will not act first in anything except to love him only. And they ate and they drank, she and her sons, that night. And she died at the age of 3 jubilees and 1 week and 1 year on that night. And her 2 sons, Esau and Jacob, buried her in the cave of Machpelah near Sarah, their father's mother. And in the 6th year of this week, Isaac called his 2 sons, Esau and Jacob. And they came to him, and he said to them, My sons, I am going the way of my fathers to the eternal home where my fathers are. Bury me near Abraham my father. Perform righteousness and uprightness upon the earth, so that the Lord will bring upon you everything which the Lord said that he would do for Abraham and for his seed. And among yourselves, my sons, be loving of your brothers as a man loves himself, and with each man seeking for his brother what is good for him, and acting together on the earth, and loving each other as themselves. And regarding the matter of idols, I command you and admonish you to scorn them and hate them, and not to love them, because they are full of error, for those who worship and bow down to them. Remember, my sons, the Lord, the God of Abraham, your father, and that I subsequently worshipped and served him in righteousness and joy, so that he might multiply you and increase your seed like the stars of heaven, with regard to number, and so that he will plant you on the earth as a righteous planting, which will not be uprooted for all the eternal generations. And now I will make you swear by the great oath, because there is not an oath which is greater than it, by the glorious and honored and great and splendid and amazing and mighty name which created heaven and earth and everything together. that you will fear him and worship him, and that each one will love his brother with compassion and righteousness, and no one will desire evil for his brother, from now and forever, all the days of your lives, so that you will prosper in all your deeds and not be destroyed. One who seeks evil against his brother will fall into his hands and be uprooted from the land of the living, and his seed will be destroyed from under heaven. And on the day of turmoil and execration and indignation and wrath, then with devouring, burning fire, just as he burned Sodom, so too will he burn up his land and his city, and everything which will be his. And he will be wiped out from the book of both the tower and everything which surrounded it, and everything which Abraham acquired at the well of the oak. And he said, I will surely increase this portion for the one whose birth was first. And Esau said, I have sold to Jacob, and I have delivered my right of seniority to Jacob, and so let it be given to him. And there is not anything which I can say concerning it, because it is his. And Isaac said, May a blessing rest upon you and upon your seed this day, my sons, because you have given rest to me, and my heart has not been grieved concerning the right of seniority, lest you act perversely concerning it. May the Lord Most High bless the man who does righteousness, him and his seed forever. And he finished commanding them and blessing them, and they ate and drank together before him, and he rejoiced because they were in mutual agreement. And they went out from him, and they rested that day, and they slept. And Isaac slept on his bed on that day rejoicing, and he slept the eternal sleep. And he died at the age of 180 years. He completed 25 weeks and 5 years, and his 2 sons, Esau and Jacob, buried him. And Esau traveled to the land of buried him. And Esau traveled to the land of Edom, to the mountain of Seir, and he dwelt there. And Jacob dwelt in Mount Hebron, in the tower of the land of the sojourning of his father Abraham. And he worshipped the Lord with all his heart, and according to the commands which were revealed, and according to the division of the days of his generations. And Leah his wife died in the 4th year of the 2nd week of the 45th Jubilee, and he buried her in the cave of Machpelah near Rebekah his mother, and north of the tomb of Sarah his father's mother. And all of her children and his children went out to weep with him for Leah his wife, and to comfort him concerning her, because he was lamenting her. For he loved her very much after Rachel, her sister, died, since she was perfect and upright in all of her ways. And she honored Jacob, and in all of the days which she lived with him, he never heard a harsh word from her mouth, because she possessed gentleness, peace, uprightness, and honor. And he remembered all of her deeds which she had done in her life, and he lamented greatly Jacob, his younger son. And they were very angry, and they argued with their father, saying, Why, since you are the elder and Jacob the younger, did your father give the right of seniority to Jacob and abandon you? And he said to them, Because I sold my right of firstborn to Jacob for a little dish of lentils. And on the day that my father sent me to hunt and snare and bring to him, so that he might eat and bless me, he went with guile and brought food and drink to my father, and my father blessed him and placed me under his hand. And now our father has made us swear, both me and him, that we will not seek after evil, either one against his brother, but that we will continue with an affection and a peace, each one with his brother, so that we will not corrupt our ways. And they said, We will not listen to you in order to make peace with him, because our might is stronger than his might, and we are stronger than he. We will go against him, and we will kill. Our might is stronger than his might, and we are stronger than he. We will go against him, and we will kill and destroy him and his sons. And if you do not go with us, we will do harm to you. And now listen to us, and we will send to Aram, and to Philistia, and to Moab, and to Ammon, and we will choose for Moab, and to Ammon, and we will choose for ourselves chosen men who are ardent in battle, and we will go against him, and we will fight with him, and we will uproot him from the land before he seizes power. And their father said to them, Do not go and make war with him, lest you fall before him. And they said to him, This very thing is your type of act from your youth until this day, and you put your neck under his yoke, but we will not listen to these words. And they sent to Aram and to Aduram, and to their father his brother all of his days. And with all of this Jacob did not know that they were coming against him for battle. But he was lamenting Leah his wife, until they drew very near to the tower with 4,000 men, warriors and chosen fighting men. And the men of Hebron sent to him, saying, Behold, your brother has come up against you in order to fight with you, with 4,000 men who are girded with swords and bear shields and military weapons, because they loved Jacob more than Esau. And they spoke to him because Jacob was a more generous and merciful man than Esau. But Jacob did not believe them until they drew very close to the tower. And he closed the gates of the tower, and he closed to the tower. And he closed the gates of the tower, and he stood on the battlement and spoke with his brother Esau, and he said, Is the consolation with which you have come in order to console me concerning my wife who died good? Is this the oath which you swore to your father and again to your mother before they died? You have sinned against the oath, and on the day when you swore to your father you were condemned. And at that time Esau answered and said to him, Mankind and beasts of the field have no righteous oaths, with which they have surely sworn forever, which they have surely sworn forever. But daily they seek evil, one against the other, and each one seeks to kill his enemy and adversary. And you will hate me and my sons forever, and there is no observing of fraternity with you. And Jacob said, You. And if the raven becomes white like the raza bird, then know that I will love you, and I will make peace with you. You will be uprooted, and your sons will be uprooted, but you will have no peace. And when Jacob saw that he had planned evil against him from his heart, and from his whole being, so that he might kill him, and so that he had come leaping like a wandering boar who had come upon a spear which was piercing him and killing him, and he would not withdraw from it, then he spoke to his own followers and to the servants, so that they might attack him and all his friends. And afterward Judah spoke to Jacob his father, and he said to him, O father, stretch out your bow and shoot your arrow and strike down the enemy and kill. You have might, because we will not kill your brother, inasmuch as he is near to you, and with us he is like you with respect to honor. And then, when Jacob drew his bow and shot an arrow and struck Esau his brother on his right breast, he killed him. And again he shot an arrow and struck Adoran the Aramean in his left breast, and drove him back and killed him. And afterward the sons of Jacob and their servants went forth to divide themselves on the 4 sides of the tower. And Judah went out in front, and Naphtali and Gad, and 50 servants with him on the south side of the tower. And they killed everyone they found before them, and not a single one escaped from them. And Levi and Dan and Asher went forth on the east side of the tower, and 50 men were with them. And they killed the warriors of Moab and Ammon. And Reuben and Issachar and Zebulun went forth on the north side of the tower, and 50 men were with them. And they killed the fighting men of the Philistines. And Simeon and Benjamin and Enoch the son of Reuben went forth on the west side of the tower, and 50 men were with them. And they killed 400 strong men, warriors of the Edomites and Hurrians, and 600 fled. And the 4 sons of Esau fled with him, and they left their slain father just as he had fallen on the hill which is in Aduram. And the sons of and they sent their father to ask whether they should make peace with them, or whether they should kill them. And Jacob sent notice to his sons to make peace. And they made peace with them, and placed a yoke of servitude upon them, so that they might pay tribute to Jacob and his sons always. And they continued paying tribute to Jacob until the day that he went down to Egypt. And the children of Edom have not ceased from the yoke of servitude which the 12 sons of Jacob ordered upon them until today. And these are the kings who ruled in Edom before a king ruled the children of Israel, until today in the land of Edom. And Balak, the son of Beor, ruled in Edom, and the name of his city was Danaba. And Balak died, and Jobab, the son of Zara, who was from Boser, ruled instead of him. And Jobab died, and Asam, who was from the land of Teman, ruled instead of him. And Asam died, and Dadath, son of Barad, who killed Midian in the field of Moab, ruled instead of him. And the name of his city was Avith. And Adath died, and Salmon, who was from Amasekah, ruled instead of him. And Salmon died, and Saul, who was from Raaboth by the river, ruled instead of him. And Salmon died, And Saul, who was from Rehoboth by the river, ruled instead of him. And Saul died, and the name of his wife was Maitabith, daughter of Matarat, daughter of Metabedzaab. These are the kings which ruled in the land of Edom. And Jacob remembered the Lord and the words which Jacob his father used to read, which were from the words of Abraham, that there is no man who may fornicate with a woman who has a husband, and that there is a judgment of death which is decreed for him in heaven, before the Lord Most High. And the sin is written on high concerning him in the eternal books always before the Lord. And Joseph remembered these words, and he did not want to lie with her. And she begged him for 1 year, and he turned away and refused to listen to her. And she embraced him and seized him in the house, so that she might force him to lie with her. And she shut the door of the house and seized him. And he left his garment to force him to lie with her. And she shut the door of the house and seized him. And he left his garment in her hand, and he broke the door and fled outside, away from her presence. And the woman saw that he would not lie with her, and she falsely accused him before his master, saying, Your Hebrew servant whom you love desired to seduce me, so that he might lie with me. And it came to pass, when I raised my voice, that he fled, and he left his garment in my hand when I seized him, and he broke the door. And the Egyptians saw Joseph's garments and the broken door, and he heard his wife's story, and he put Joseph in prison, in the place where the prisoners whom the king imprisoned stayed. And he was there in that prison, and the Lord gave Joseph favor and mercy before the chief guard of the prison, because he saw that the Lord was with him. And the Lord caused everything which he did to prosper, and he left everything in his hands. And the chief guard of the prison knew nothing which was with him, because Joseph did everything, and the Lord perfected it. And he dwelt there 2 years. And in those days Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, Pharaoh dreamed 2 dreams in a single night concerning the matter of the famine which would come upon all the land. And he awoke from his sleep, and he called all of the interpreters of dreams and magicians who were in Egypt. And he told them of both his dreams, but they were unable to explain them. Then the chief of the butlers remembered Joseph, and he told the king about him. And he brought him out of the prison, and told both of the dreams in his presence. And he said in the presence of the Pharaoh that both of his dreams were one. And he said to him, 7 years will come, abundance will be in all the land of Egypt, but afterward 7 years of famine, which is unlike any previous famine, will be in all the land. And now let Pharaoh appoint overseers in all the land, and let them store up food for a city within the city during the days of the plentiful years, and there will be food for the 7 years of famine. And the land will not perish in the presence of the famine, because it will be very severe. And the Lord gave Joseph favor and mercy in the sight of the Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to his servants, We will not find a man wise and knowledgeable as this man, because the Spirit of the Lord is with him. And he set him second in all of his kingdom, and he made him rule in all of Egypt. And he made him ride upon the second chariot of the Pharaoh. And he invested him with a garment of byssus, and hung a gold chain on his neck. And they proclaimed before him, El wa Abirir, and gave him the signet ring on his hand. And he made him rule over all his house, and he made him great. And he said to him, I will not be greater than you, except regarding the throne alone. And Joseph ruled in all the land of Egypt. And of all of the judges and all of the servants of the Pharaoh and all of those who did the king's work loved him, because he walked uprightly, and he had no pompousness or arrogance or partiality. And there was no bribery, because he ruled all the people of the land uprightly. And the land of Egypt was at peace before the Pharaoh on account of Joseph, because the Lord was with him and gave him favor and mercy for all his family before all who knew him and those who heard witness of him. And the kingdom of the Pharaoh was upright, and there was no Satan, and there was no evil. And the king called Joseph Sephantiphans, and he gave the daughter of Potiphar, the daughter of the priest of Heliopolis, the chief of the guard, to Joseph as a wife. And on the day that Joseph stood with the Pharaoh, he was 30 years old when he stood with the Pharaoh. And in that year Isaac died. And it came about just as Joseph related concerning the interpretation of the 2 dreams. And there were 7 abundant years in all the land of Egypt. And the land of Egypt was very fruitful, one measure yielding 1,800 measures. And Joseph gathered the food of a city into the city until it was full of grain, and they were unable to count or measure it because of its magnitude. And in the 45th Jubilee, in the 2nd week, in the 2nd year, Judah took a wife for his firstborn, from the daughters of Aram, and her name was Tamar. But he hated her and would not lie with her, because his mother was from the daughters of Canaan, and he wanted to take a wife from his mother's people. But Judah, his father, did not permit him. And the firstborn of Judah, was evil, and the Lord killed him. And Judah said to Onan his brother, Go to your brother's wife, and act as a leveret, and raise up seed for your brother. And Onan knew that the seed would not be his, but only his brother's. And he entered the house of his brother's wife, and poured out his seed on the ground. And he was evil in the sight of the Lord, and he killed him. And Judah said to Tamar, and he killed him. And Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, Remain at the house of your father as a widow until Selah my son grows up, and I will give you to him as a wife. And he grew up. But Bethuel, Judah's wife, did not permit Selah her son to marry. And Bethuel, Judah's wife, died in the 5th year of that week. And in the 6th year Judah went up in order to shear his sheep at Timnah. And they told Tamar, Behold, your father-in-law is going up to shear his sheep at Timnah. And she put off the clothes of her widowhood, and she put upon a veil. And she made herself beautiful, and sat by the gates which are toward the Timnah road. And when Judah walked along, he found her, and presumed that she was a prostitute. And he said to her, Let me enter into you. And she said to him, Come on. And he entered. And she said to him, Give me my fee. And he said to her, I have nothing in my hand except my signet ring of my finger, and my necklace, and my staff which is in my hand. And she said to him, To her father's house. And Judah sent a young goat in the hand of his shepherd, an Adullamite, but he did not find her. And he asked the men of the district, saying, Where is the prostitute who was here? And they said to him, There is no prostitute here with us. And he returned and told him that he did not find her. And he said, I inquired of the men of the district, and they said to me, There is no prostitute here. And he said, Let her take it, lest we become an object of scorn. No prostitute here. And he said, Let her take it, lest we become an object of scorn. And when she completed 3 months, it was obvious that she was pregnant. And they told Judah, saying, Behold, Tamar, your daughter-in-law, is pregnant through prostitution. And Judah went to her father's house, and he said to her father and her brothers, Bring her out, and let them burn her, because she has caused a defilement in Israel. And it came to pass, when they brought her out to burn her, that she sent to her father-in-law the signet ring, and the necklace, and the staff. And she said, Recognize whose these are, because I am pregnant by him. And Judah recognized them, and said, Tamar was more righteous than I, and therefore let them not burn her. And on account of that she was not given to Selah, and therefore he did not approach her again. And after this she bore 2 children, Perez and Zerah, in the 7th year of this 2nd week. And after this, the 7 years of full harvest which Joseph told Pharaoh about were completed. And Judah knew that the deed which he did was evil, because he lay with his daughter-in-law, and he condemned himself in his own sight, and he knew that he had sinned Israel. And we told Judah that his 2 sons had not lain with her, and therefore his seed stood for a 2nd generation, and it would not be uprooted, because in the integrity of his eyes he went and sought judgment, because by the judgment of Abraham, which he commanded his sons, Judah wanted to burn her with fire. In the 1st year of the 3rd week of the 45th Jubilee, the famine began to come upon the land, and the rain refused to be given to the land, because there was nothing which would come down. And the earth suffered famine. But in the land of Egypt there was food, because Joseph gathered the grain in the land during the 7 years of full harvest, and he guarded it. And Egypt came to Joseph so that he might give them food. And he opened up the storehouses where the wheat of the 1st year was, and he sold it to the people of the land for gold. And the famine was very severe in the people of the land for gold. And the famine was very severe in the land of Canaan. And Jacob heard that there was food in Egypt. And he sent 10 of his sons to get food for him in Egypt. But he did not send Benjamin. And the 10 sons of Jacob arrived in Egypt, and those who were traveling there. And Joseph knew them, but they did not know him. And he spoke with them and interrogated them, and he said to them, Are you men not spies? And you have come to examine the paths of the land? And he locked them up. But afterward he released them again, and he made only Simeon stay. And he sent his 9 brothers away, and he filled their grain sacks with grain. And he also put their gold in their grain sacks. But they did not know it. And he commanded them that they should bring their little brother, because they told him that their father was alive, and also their little brother. And they went up from the land of Egypt, and they arrived in the land of Canaan, and told their father everything just as they had experienced it, and how the overseer of the district had spoken harshly with him, and held Simeon until they would in his sack, and he feared to send him on account of that. But the famine increased and became severe in the land of Canaan, and all the earth except for the land of Egypt. For many of the Egyptians stored up their grain for food after they saw that Joseph was gathering grain and placing it in storehouses and guarding it for the year of famine. And the men of Egypt ate it in the first year of their famine. And when Israel saw that the famine was very severe in the land, and there was no escaping, he said to his sons, Go. There was no escaping. He said to his sons, Go, return and get food for us, lest we die. And they said, We shall not go. If our little brother does not come with us, we shall not go. And Israel saw that if he did not send him with them, they would all be destroyed due to the famine. And Reuben said, Place him in my hands, and if I do not return him to you, kill both of my sons for his life. And he said to him, He will not go with you. And Judah drew near and said, Send him with me, and if I do not return him to you, I will be guilty before you all the days of my life. And he sent him with him in the 2nd year of that week, on the 1st of the month, and they arrived at the district of the Egypt with all those who were traveling there. And their presents were in their hands, stacte, almonds, terebinth nuts, and pure honey. And they arrived and stood before Joseph, and he saw Benjamin his brother, and he knew him. And he said to them, Is this your little brother? And they said to him, He is. And they said to him, He is. And he said, May the Lord be merciful to you, my son. And he sent him into his house. And he brought Simeon to them, and made a banquet for them. And they presented him with his gift, which they brought in their hands. And they ate before him. And he gave a portion to all of them. And he increased. It came to pass, when they departed from there, that Joseph said to the man of his house, Pursue them, run and reproach them, saying, You have repaid me evil in place of good. You have robbed me of the silver cup from which my Lord drinks. And return to me their little brother, and hurry, bring him before I go to my judgment seat. And he ran after them, and spoke to them according to these words. And they said to him, May God forbid that your servants would do this thing, or steal any vessel from your Lord's house. But rather, our money which we found at first in our bags, your servants have brought back from the land of Canaan. Therefore, why would we steal any vessel? Behold, search both us and our animals, and wherever you find the cup in the bag of any one of our men, let him be killed, and both we and our asses will become slaves to your Lord. And he said to them, It will not be so, but with the man with whom I find it, he alone, I will take as a servant, but you will return in peace to your house. And when he searched their baggage, he started from the eldest and ended with the youngest, and it was found in the bag of Benjamin. And they tore their clothes and loaded their donkeys and returned to the city. And they reached Joseph's house, and they all bowed to him with their face on the ground. And Joseph said to them, You have done evil. And they said, What can we say? With what can we defend ourselves? Our Lord has found the guilt of his servants. Behold, we are servants of our Lord, and also our donkeys. And Joseph said to them, I fear the Lord. You, go to your houses, but let your brother alone be my servant, because you have done evil. Did you not know that a man would be pleased with his cup, as I am with this cup, and you stole it from me? And Judah said, I pray, O Lord, let me, your servant, speak a word in my Lord's ear. His mother bore 2 brothers to our father, your servant. One went forth and was lost, and was not found, and he alone was left from his mother. And your servant, our father, loves him, and his life is bound with the life of this one. And it will come to pass that if we go to your servant, our father, and if the lad is not with us, he will die. and he will bring down our father to death with sorrow. And let me, your servant, remain alone instead of the child as a servant to my lord, and let the lad go with his brothers, because I was put as a pledge for him at the hand of your servant, our father. And if I should not always be guilty to our father. And Joseph saw that the heart of all of them was one in accord with one another for good, and he was unable to control his emotion. And he told them that he was Joseph. And he conversed with them in the Hebrew language, and embraced their necks and wept. But they did not recognize him, and they began to weep. And he said to them, Do not weep for me, but hasten and bring my father to me, and I shall see him before I die, even as the eyes of my brother Benjamin see. For behold, this is the 2nd year of famine, and there will still be 5 years, and there will be no harvest or fruit of the tree or plowing. Hasten, come down, you and your households, lest you be destroyed in the famine. And you shall not grieve for your possessions, for the Lord has sent me first to prepare before you, so that many people might live. And tell my father that I am still alive, and behold, you were seeing that the Lord ordained me as a father to the Pharaoh, and so that I might rule in his house and over all the land of Egypt. And tell my father about all my honor and all the wealth and honor which the Lord had Pharaoh. He gave them chariots and provisions for the way, and he gave them all clothing of many colors and money. And he also sent to their father clothing and money, and 10 asses which were carrying wheat. And he sent them off. And they went up, and they told their father that Joseph was alive, and that he was distributing grain to all the people of the land. And he ruled over all the land of Egypt. And their father, as there was a famine for all the wild animals, and the cattle, and the birds, and also man. And on the 16th day the Lord appeared to him, and he said to him, Jacob, Jacob. And he said to him, Here I am. He said to him, Jacob, Jacob. And he said to him, Here I am. And again he said to him, I am the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham and Isaac. Do not fear to go down to Egypt, because I will make you into a great people there. I shall go down with you, and I shall bring you back, and you will be buried in this land. And Joseph will place his hand upon your eyes. Do not fear. Go down into Egypt. And his children and grandchildren rose up, and they loaded their father and their possessions on the chariots. And Israel rose up from the well of the oath on the 16th day of this 3rd month, and he went to the land of Egypt. And Israel sent Judah before him to Joseph his son, so that he might examine the land of Goshen. For Joseph told his brothers that they should come to dwell there, so they might be his neighbor. And it was the best in the land of Egypt, and it was near him for all of them, and for the cattle. And these are the names. Reuben was the firstborn of Israel, and these are the names of his sons, Enoch, and Palu, and Tezron, and Carni, 5. Simeon and his sons, and these are the names of his sons, Jemuel, and Jamin, and Ohad, and Jachin, and Zohar, and Shaul, the son of the Zephonite woman, 7. Levi and his sons, these are the names of his sons, Gershon, and Kohath, and Merari, 4. Judah and his sons, these are the names of his sons, Shelah, and Perez, and Zerah, 4. Issachar and his sons, these are the names of his sons, Tola, and Phua, and Jasub, and Shimran, 5. Zebulun and his sons, and these are the names of his sons, Sered, and Olan, and Jalel, 4. And these are the sons of Jacob and their sons, whom Leah bore to Jacob in Mesopotamia, 6, plus 1 girl, Dinah, their sister, and all of the persons who were sons of Leah, and 9. And Jacob their father was with them, and they totaled 30. And the sons of Zilpah, the attendant of Leah, the wife of Jacob, which she bore to Egypt, were Gad and Asher. And these are the names of their sons who entered into Egypt with him. The sons of Gad are Ziphion, and Gaji, and Shuni, and Esbon, and Ishva, and Ishvi, and Beriah, and Sidah, their sister, 6. And all of the persons were 14, and the total of Leah was 44. And the sons of Rachel, who was the wife of Jacob, were Joseph and Benjamin, and sons were born to Joseph in Egypt before his father entered Egypt, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, the priest of Heliopolis, bore to him, namely Manasseh and Ephraim, 3. And the sons of Benjamin are Bela, and Becher, and Ashbel, and Gera, and Naaman, and Ehi, and Rosh, and Mupim, and Hupim, and Ard, 11. And all of the persons of Rachel were 14. And the sons of Bilhah, the attendant of Rachel, the wife of Jacob, which she bore to Jacob, are Dan and Naphtali. And these are the names of their sons who entered Egypt with them. And the sons of Dan are Hushim, and Salmon, and Asudi, and Ijaka, and Solomon, 6. And they died during the year they entered Egypt, and there was left to Dan only Hushim. And these are the names of the sons of Naphtali, Jazael, and Guni, and Jezer, and Shallum, and Eve. And Eve was born after the years of the famine, died in Egypt. And all of the persons of Rachel were 26. And all of the persons of Jacob who entered Egypt were 70 persons. Therefore all of those sons and grandsons of his were 70, but 5 died in Egypt before Joseph, and they had no children. And 2 sons of Judah, Er and Onan, were set among the 70 nations. And Israel entered into the land of Egypt, into the land of Goshen, on the 1st of the 4th month in the 2nd year of the 3rd week of the 45th Jubilee. And Joseph came to greet his father Jacob in the land of Goshen, and he embraced the neck of his father and wept. And Israel said to Joseph, "Let me die now after I have seen you, and let the Lord, the God of Israel, be blessed, the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac, who did not withhold his mercy and his kindness from his servant Jacob. It is enough for me that I have seen your face while I was alive, for the vision which I saw in Bethel was certainly true. May the Lord my God be blessed forever and ever, and blessed be his name." And Joseph and his brothers ate before their father, and they drank wine. And Jacob rejoiced very greatly because he saw Joseph eating and drinking with his brothers before him. And he blessed the Creator of all, who kept him and kept for him his 12 sons. And Joseph gave to his father and his brothers as a gift that they might dwell in the land of Goshen, and Ramses, and all of the districts belonging to them, which he ruled over before the Pharaoh. And Israel and his sons dwelt in the land of Goshen, the best of the land of Egypt. And Israel was 130 years old when he entered Egypt. And Joseph provided bread for his father and his brothers and their possessions, as much as was sufficient for them for the 7 years of famine. And the land of Egypt suffered in view of the famine. And Joseph gathered all the land of Egypt for the Pharaoh by means of the food, and men and their cattle and everything he acquired for Pharaoh. And the years of the famine were completed. And Joseph gave seed and food to the people who were in the land, so that they might sow the land in the 8th year, because the river was full in all the land of Egypt. For during the 7 years of famine it was not full, and it did not irrigate except a few places by the shore of the river. But now it was full, and the Egyptians sowed the land, and it bore much wheat in that year. And it was the 1st year of the 4th week of the 45th Jubilee. And Joseph took for the king 1/5 of everything, which were 3 jubilees, 147 years. And he died in the 4th year, the 5th week, in the 45th Jubilee. And Israel blessed his sons before he died. And he told them everything which was going to happen to them in the land of Egypt and in the latter days. And he made known how it would come upon them. And he blessed them, and he gave to Joseph a double portion upon the land. And he slept with his fathers, and he was buried in the cave of Machpelah in the land of Canaan, near Abraham his father, in the tomb which he excavated for himself in the cave of Machpelah in the land of Hebron. And he gave all of the books in his father's books to Levi his son, so that he might preserve them and renew them for his sons until this day. And it came to pass after Jacob died that the children of Israel increased in the land of Egypt, and they became a numerous people, and they were all in accord in their hearts, so that each one loved his brother, and each man helped his brother. And they increased exceedingly, and increased very much for 10 weeks. of years, and all the days of the life of Joseph. And there was no Satan or anything evil all the days of the life of Joseph, which he lived after his father Jacob, because all of the Egyptians were honoring the children of Israel all the days of the life of Joseph. And Joseph died at 110 years of age, and 17 years he dwelt in the land of Canaan, and 10 years he remained. And the king of Egypt went forth to fight with the king of Canaan in his 47th jubilee, in the second week in the second year. And the children of Israel brought forth the bones of the children of Jacob, all except the bones of Joseph. And they buried Jacob, all except the bones of Joseph. And they buried them in the field in the cave of Machpelah in the mountain. And many returned into Egypt, but a few of them are left on Mount Hebron, and Amram your father was left with him. And the king of Canaan was victorious over the king of Egypt, and he closed the gates of Egypt, and he conceived an evil thought against the children of Israel, so that he might cause them to suffer. And he said to the man of Egypt, Behold, the people of the sons of Israel have grown and increased more than we. Come, let us act wisely concerning them before they increase, and let us cause them to suffer in slavery before war comes to us, or before they battle with us. Or if not that, then they will mix with our enemy, and will depart from our land, because their hearts and their faces are upon the land of Canaan. And they appointed over them taskmasters to make them suffer in slavery. And they built strengthened cities for Pharaoh, Pithom and Ramses. And they built all of the walls and all of the ramparts which had fallen in the cities of Egypt. And they made them slaves by force. And to the extent that they acted cruelly against them, they likewise. And in the 7th week, in the 7th year, in his 47th jubilee, your father came from the land of Canaan, and you were born in the 4th week, in the 6th year, in this 48th jubilee, which were days of affliction upon the children of Israel. And the king of Egypt, Pharaoh, issued an order concerning them that they should throw all of their male children who were born into the river. And they continued throwing them into the river 7 months, until the day when you were born. And your mother hid you 3 months. And they reported concerning her, and she made an ark for you, and she covered it with pitch and asphalt. And she placed it among the reeds by the shore of the river, and she placed you in it 7 days. And your mother came in the night and suckled you, and in the day Miriam your sister guarded you from the birds. And in those days Tharmuth, the daughter of Pharaoh, came in order to bathe in the river, and she heard your voice as you were crying, and she told her maids to fetch you. And they brought her to you, and she took you from the ark, and had pity on you. And your sister said to her, Shall I go and call for you one of the Hebrew women who will nurse and suckle the infant for you? And she said to her, Go. And she went and called your mother, Jochebed. And she went and called your mother, Jochebed. And she gave a wage to her, and she nursed you. And after this, when you had grown, they brought you to the daughter of Pharaoh, and you became her son. And Amram your father taught you writing. And after you completed 3 weeks of years, they brought you into the royal court. And you were in the court 3 weeks of years, until the day when you went out of the royal court. And you saw an Egyptian beating your friend, who was from the children of Israel. And you killed him and hid him in the sand. And on the 2nd day you found 2 of the children of Israel striving together. And you said to that one who was acting falsely, Why are you striking your brother? And he was angry and indignant and said, Who set you as a ruler and judge over us? Do you also desire to kill me as you killed the Egyptian yesterday? And you were afraid, and you fled because of those words. And in the 6th year, in the 3rd week of the 49th Jubilee, you went to dwell in the land of Midian 5 weeks. Week of the 49th Jubilee, you went to dwell in the land of Midian 5 weeks in 1 year, and you returned to Egypt on the 2nd week in the 2nd year, in the 50th Jubilee. And you know what was related to you on Mount Sinai, and what Prince Mastema desired to do with you when you returned to Egypt, on the way when you met him at the shelter. Did he not desire to kill you with all of his might, and to save the Egyptians from your hand, because he saw that you were sent to execute judgment and vengeance upon the Egyptians? And I delivered you from his hand, and you did the signs and wonders which you were sent to perform in Egypt, against Pharaoh and all his house, and his servants and his people. And the Lord executed great vengeance upon them on account of Israel. And he smote them with blood, and frogs, and lice, and dog flies, and evil boils, which break out as blisters, and their cattle with death, and hailstones, with which he destroyed everything which sprouted up for them, of his servants, and before his people. And everything happened according to your word. 10 great and cruel judgments came on the land of Egypt, so that you might execute vengeance upon it for Israel. And the Lord did everything on account of Israel, and according to the covenant he made with Abraham, so that he would take vengeance upon them, just as they had made them serve by force. And Prince Mastema stood up before you, and desired to make you fall into the hand of Pharaoh. And he aided the magicians of the Egyptians, and they stood up and acted before you. Thus we let them do evil, but we did not empower them with healing, so that it might be done by their hands. And the Lord smote them with evil wounds, so that they were unable to stand, because we destroyed their ability to do any single sign. And despite all of the signs and wonders, Prince Mastema was not shamed until he had become strong, and called to the Egyptians, so that they might pursue after him strong, and called to the Egyptians, so that they might pursue after you with all the army of the Egyptians, with their chariots, and with their horses, and with all the multitude of the peoples of Egypt. And I stood between the Egyptians and Israel, and we delivered Israel from his hand and from the hand of his people. And the Lord brought them out through the midst of the sea as through dry land. And all the people whom he brought out to pursue after Israel, the Lord our God threw into the middle of the sea, into the depths of the river. He avenged 1,000,000, and 1,000 strong and ardent men perished on account of one infant, whom they threw into the midst of the river, from the sons of your people. And on the 14th day, and on the 15th, and on the 16th, and on the 17th, and on the 18th, Prince Mastema was bound and shut up from coming after the children of Israel, so that he might not accuse them. And on the 19th day we released them, so that they might help the Egyptians, and pursue after the children of Israel. And he hardened their hearts and strengthened them. And it was conceived of by the Lord our God that he might smite the Egyptians, and throw them into the midst of the sea. And on the 14th day we bound, and we did not bring the children of Israel from Egypt in their nakedness. Remember the commandment which the Lord commanded you concerning Passover, that you observe it in its time, on the 14th of the first month, so that you might sacrifice it before it becomes evening, and so that you might eat it during the night on the evening of the 15th, from the time of sunset. For on this night there was the beginning of the feast, and there was the beginning of joy. You continued eating the Passover in Egypt, and all the powers of Mastema were sent to kill all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh to the firstborn of the captive maidservant, who was at the millstone, and to the cattle. And this is the sign which the Lord gave them in every house where they saw the blood of a year-old lamb upon its doors, so that they would not enter into the house to kill. They would pass over, so that all who were in the house might be saved, because the sign of the blood was in the house might be saved, because the sign of the blood was on its doors. And the host of the Lord did everything which the Lord commanded them, and they passed over all of the children of Israel, and the plague did not come upon them to destroy any life from them, whether cattle or men or dogs. And there was a very great plague in Egypt, and there was no house in Egypt in which there was no corpse, and weeping and lamenting. And all of Israel remained eating the flesh of the Passover, and drinking wine, and praising and blessing and glorifying the Lord, the God of their fathers. And they were prepared to depart from the yoke of Egypt, and from evil slavery. And you remember this day of all the days of your life, and observe it from year to year, all the days of your life, once per year on its day, according to all of its law. And you will not delay one day from its day, or from 1 month to another month. For it is an eternal decree, and engraved upon the heaven, to lift up sin upon himself, so that the children of Israel will be the 14th of the first month, between the evenings from the third part of the day until the third part of the night, because 2 parts of the day are given for light, and 1/3 for evening. This is what the Lord commanded you, so that you might observe it between the evenings. And it is not fitting to sacrifice it during any time of light, except during the time of the border of evening. And they shall eat it during the time of evening until 1/3 of the night. And what is left of all of its flesh from the third of the night and beyond, they shall burn with fire. and it is not fitting that they should boil it in water, and with its feet, and they shall roast it in fire without breaking any of its bones within it, because no bone of the children of Israel will be broken. Therefore the Lord commanded the children of Israel to observe the Passover on its appointed day. And it is not fitting to break any bone from it, because it is the day of the feast, and it is the day of the command. And there is no passing over it one day from its day, or from month to month, because it shall be observed on the day of the feast. And you command the children of Israel to observe the Passover in their days, and every year, days when a house is built in the name of the Lord, and in their land of their inheritance, they shall go there, and they shall sacrifice at the Passover at evening, when the sun is setting on the third part of the day. And they shall offer up its blood on the threshold of the altar, and its fat they shall place in the fire which is above the altar. And they shall eat its flesh cooked in fire within the court of these, or in any district except before the tabernacle of the Lord, or before his house in which his name dwells. And let them not stray from after each year, both its period of days and the feast of unleavened bread, so that they might eat unleavened bread for 7 days, so that they might observe its feast, so that they might bring its gift day by day, during those 7 days, to rejoice before the Lord upon the altar of your God. For this feast you observed with nervousness when you went out from Egypt, until you entered into the wilderness of Sur, because you completed it on the shore of the sea. And after this law I made you know the days of the Sabbaths in the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai. And I also related to you the Sabbaths of the lands on Mount Sinai, and the years of Jubilees in the Sabbaths of years I related to you. But its year I have not related to you until you enter into the land which you will possess. And the land will keep its Sabbaths when they dwell upon it, and they will know the year of Jubilee. On account of this I ordained for you the weeks of years, and the years and the Jubilees, as 49 Jubilees from the days of Adam until this day, and 1 week and 2 years. And there are still 40 further years to learn the commands of the Lord, until they cross over the shore of the land of Canaan, crossing over the Jordan to its western side. And Jubilees will pass until Israel is purified from all the sin and fornication and defilement and uncleanness and sin and error. And they will dwell in confidence in all the land, and then it will. And behold, the commandment of the Sabbaths I have written for you, and all the judgments of its law. 6 days will you work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God, and you shall not do any work in it, you or your children, or your manservant, or your maidservant, or any of your cattle, or the stranger who is with you. And let the man who does anything on it die. Every man who will profane this day, who will lie with his wife, and whoever will discuss a matter that he will do on it, so that he might make it on it a journey for any buying or selling, or whoever draws water upon it, which was not prepared for him on the 6th day, and whoever lifts up anything so that he will carry to take out of his tent or from his house, let him die. So you shall not do any work upon the day of the Sabbath, except what you prepared for yourself on the 6th day, to eat and to drink, and to rest, and to observe the Sabbath from all your work of that day, and to bless the Lord your God, who gave you the day of festival, and the holy day, and the day of the holy kingdom for all Israel is this day among their days, always. For great is the honor which the Lord gave to Israel, to eat and to drink, and to be satisfied on this day of festival, and to rest in it from all work of the occupations of the children of men, except to offer incense and to bring gifts and sacrifices before the Lord for the day and the Sabbaths. This work alone shall be done on the day of the Sabbath in the sanctuary of the Lord your God, so that they might atone for Israel with continual gift day by day, for an acceptable memorial before the Lord, and so that he might accept them forever, day by day, just as he commanded you. And as for any man who does work on it, or who goes on a journey, or who plows a field, either at home or any other place, or who kindles a fire, who rides any animal, or who travels in the sea in a boat, or any man who slaughters or kills anything, or who slashes the throat of cattle or bird, or who snares any beast or bird or fish, or who fasts or makes war on the day of Sabbath. Let the man who does any of these on the day of the Sabbath die, so that the children of Israel might keep the Sabbath according
Now, this video is not going to be for everybody. Now, this is going to seem really out there to a lot of people who haven't studied this stuff in depth and aren't this far along in their awakening, because this is paradigm shattering stuff. This is about how far from reality we really are, how the world that we live in is almost nothing like what they have told us that it is. And the history of this place we live is almost nothing like the re-education camps have told us that it is. So if you have been on my channel and you've watched stuff like this, Nephilim hybrids and all of this, 5 shocking things you never knew were in the Bible, or the whistleblower about what's going on in Antarctica, or any of these humanoid hybrids, or especially if you've watched like the giant in Afghanistan, or this end time awakening about the giants and the contamination of the human gene pool and all of this type of thing. If you've watched these and you're like, oh, that's total BS, and you know, you're out of your mind, you're a nutter, stuff like that, then this video most assuredly is not for you. Then you probably want to click off right now, because this might do more harm than good for somebody who has not had these baby steps leading up to the realization of our history. But I would hope that you would continue your research and drink the baby's milk until you can eat the meat, because this that I'm about to talk about, it's meat. And some of you will easily digest this because you're wide awake, but some of you cannot digest this, so you might want to wait. So I'm just going to start by talking about petrification. What petrification is: the process by which organic matter exposed to minerals over a long period of time is turned into stone. An organic object that has been turned to stone. So, you know, when we think about fossils and stuff, a lot of times we think that they're just digging up actual bones. But these aren't bones, they're rocks, most of them. Of course, we dig up bones, no kidding, but I'm talking about petrified fossils. Petrified fossils are stone. They are organic matter, like these petrified trees or petrified animals that have been turned to stone, actual bodies that were turned to stone through this process of mineralization. So I just want to clear that up, because I know people think that a lot of these archaeological expeditions that they're dealing with just, you know, bones. They're recovering actual, you know, some sort of organic matter, but that is not the case. These petrified fossils are stone. So think about what I'm saying before we move on to the next step. I'm talking about animals and people turned to stone. And I know some people are going to say, not people. People don't turn to stone because they can't be petrified. It takes millions and millions of years to petrify fossils. And even Bible believers may believe that it still takes thousands of years or millions of years, because fossils are from dinosaurs, right? They're from the antediluvian world, which means the pre-flood world. But that's simply not the case. There are tons of examples. Here's a petrified leg inside a boot. Here's a petrified hat that was made of organic material, probably leather. Here's a fossilized hammer, where the wood part of the hammer is partially coalified with quartz and calcite crystalline. But we'll start with this human leg, because this human leg was found inside a boot that could be identified by the boot company that was from Texas that began manufacturing boots in 1936. So it's impossible that this is billions of years old or millions of years old. And it's just like the hammer. Unless you think dinosaurs were using hammers, none of this makes sense. And that's what I always say about mysteries and anomalies. There are no mysteries and anomalies. The truth is right in front of our faces. When you say the word anomaly, that means evidence to the contrary. So if something doesn't fit the narrative, the official narrative, if something doesn't fit the official version, the official theory that they're shoving down our throats in the re-education camps, then it's not an anomaly because it doesn't fit. It's evidence that the theory is incorrect, because science incorporates all data to come up with a theory, a hypothesis. You can't just take data that doesn't fit your theory and go, oh, that's an anomaly, it's a mystery. No, it's evidence. It's evidence and it's science that proves that this paradigm we have been taught that we are living in is inaccurate. Like here, this fossilized hat, they make a little quip. Is this a caveman's hard hat? You know, no, of course not. This is a modern hat, and yet it is petrified. It is made of stone now. Likewise, this human leg that was found inside this boot, obviously the rest of the body is broken off through erosion and is probably in pieces all around that we just perceive as rocks. But this boot has been through CAT scans and MRIs and has been tested, and all of it, there is a complete human foot and part of a leg in here, and now it is limestone. It is just a rock, but it is a petrified fossil. So the CAT scans and stuff were performed at Harris Methodist Hospital in Bedford, Texas on July 24th of 1997. This gives all of the technicians' names and all of this information. I'll put the links below so that this is in a museum. All of the scans are in the museum, the foot and leg and the boot, all of it. It's in the museum, so you can go see it for yourself. I'll put all those links below. And here's another one. Here is a finger, a fossilized human finger that has been found. They have dissected it. It has also been replaced with limestone. They have done all of the CAT scans, x-rays, MRIs on it in Oklahoma. All of this information, again, will be below in the links. Now, I specifically bring up this finger because it looks like a stone. Stones that we see all around us all the time. Smooth stones. And this will lead to some research that I'm going to get into here in a minute with a gentleman who calls things no-toes. He calls stones no-toes. And that's because these digits, once they're petrified, they break off. He deals a lot with the petrified fossils of human feet and hands and things like that that are unrecognizable to us because the digits break off so easily. So again, you can see, you know, this could, if you didn't know what you were looking for, you could see how this could be mistaken for just an oval stone. And it is a stone, but it was also a human finger. These are all pictures of the petrified forest, and you know, we've all heard of that. We don't talk much about petrified humans or petrified animals, but we do talk about the petrified forest quite a bit. So let's look at a couple of these pictures. And again, some of these are monstrous, absolutely monstrous in size. So, you know, at first glance, this looks like some strange rock formation, but of course now we know these were giant trees, and you see all these little stones around it from the erosion and little pieces being broken off and stuff over decades and centuries and millennia. So we have all of these smaller stones that are part of the landscape, and we just assume those are rocks, like rocks just always were rocks. But those, even though they don't look like trees because they're broken into little pieces, those are all little pieces of these trees from this petrified forest that have been broken and scattered over all the centuries and millennia. And there are petrified forests everywhere, not just in America. Here's one picture of a petrified forest, and you can see the types of stone. So when we see petrification, there's all different types of stone. Things turn into all different types of stone, not just limestone. It just depends on the conditions, you know, the water levels, the amount of time, what type of sediment and minerals were in the sediment around that covered these things. So you can see these petrified trees look much different than the ones in Arizona. So let's look at this one. So we just say, oh, here's this mysterious rock sitting here in the middle of nowhere. But what if this stone, what if this was something petrified? Not a tree, but organic matter that petrified. I mean, look at it. It looks similar to a sphinx. Now, I know that might be a stretch, but I just wanted to kind of slowly bring you into what I'm about to tell you. The Great Awakening is here. But the Great Awakening is about far, far more than just politics and QAnon and the cabal and all of that. I just wanted to put this picture of these dinosaur bones up so you guys can keep this in mind as you start viewing these pictures I'm about to show you. Because some of these quote-unquote rocks are enormous, and it's hard to wrap your mind around it. And although the Vatican and the Smithsonian have secreted away much of the evidence and have created this false narrative to explain what these things are that we see with our own eyes, at least I think we can all agree at this point that they did exist, that dinosaurs did exist, that giant creatures once inhabited this place we call Earth. The Bible calls it the antediluvian age, the pre-flood era. the first Earth age. And I bring that up not to be religious, because the presence of water is key. Water, pressure, temperature, weight, enormous amounts of sediment covering these creatures all at once, suddenly. Things like that are very important to understand the fossilization process, the petrification process, and that it does not take millions or billions of years. And water is also important because the presence of water completely messes up our entire carbon dating process. So anyway, let's get to it. Let's get started. Let's look at some of these pictures, and hopefully you'll see that the entire Earth is covered, just sprinkled over every continent, these quote unquote rocks that look exactly like huge animals and creatures. And we just climb on them and walk around them and go to the beach and take our picture with them. And the scientists tell us, isn't that odd? What a coincidence. Look what nature does. The geology just somehow naturally forms all of these stones all around us. Everywhere we look, all around us, we see skulls and faces and feet and hands and animals and everything else in the rocks all around us. And we're just told to ignore it. Don't look around you. If you look around you, isn't it amazing that geology just naturally makes it look like the ground and the rocks are made up of creatures? But I'm here to show you guys that geology was once biology. think I want to interrupt the slideshow right here because this picture reminds me of Beaver Ridge. And the Native American legend around that was that the ridge itself was part of a giant ancient beaver, a petrified beaver, and that there was a living giant humanoid in the area that they had to appease. And at some point they had a falling out with him. And they said that he cut off their water source by stepping on their creek and damming it up. Now, in our modern paradigm, that seems impossible. It must just be mythology or legend. But they said it really happened in ancient times. And so I thought that was interesting in light of these things that we see, like giant petrified beavers and lakes shaped like giant footprints. Now, before we go on to the next level, I want to stop and touch on the science behind this, the CAT scans, the MRIs, the DNA tests, all of the geology work and the anatomy work that is being done in this field, because a lot of people will say, oh, they're just rocks, like we're just wild-eyed, conspiracy theorists that don't study science, and there's nothing further from the truth. This is being suppressed. This evidence has been, Roger took this to Yale University and other places. It's being actively suppressed, but there is science behind it. So I'm just going to show a couple of quick clips from Roger at Mud Fossils University, and he will talk about how the mud fossils line up with anatomy, the geology compared to anatomy, and all of the things with veins being veins. When we find veins in these stone, that they're actually veins and things like that. Now, I know this is elementary. This is Mud Fossils 101, and a lot of people think I'm moving too slow, but I'm trying to create a tool to reason with people that have never been exposed to this type of thing. There's a huge communication gap, and you can't just like blast people in the face with this out of the blue and expect them to understand, because in their paradigm, they're living in a totally different world. So although I had to start way at the beginning and talk about petrification and all of these things, if you've studied this for a long time, then please forgive that and understand that this is a tool. And hopefully, for those of you who are seeing this for the first time, this will help build a foundation so that you can receive it. Because, sometimes you have to offer people a sip of water on their journey, and you can't just take a fire hose and blast them in the face. You have to give it to them where they can digest it. So hopefully that's what I'm doing. And for those of you who have studied this a long time, I'm sorry that it seems to be going slow. This is just scratching the surface on the research and the images. So the go-to guys on that would be Roger at Mud Fossils University. That you can find him on YouTube, Facebook, anything like that. Age of Disclosure has a ton of images and good work, and Dictionary of Truth is doing some fantastic work right now. So check all of them out. You can find them on YouTube. So we haven't even gotten to any of the really interesting or shocking stuff yet, but let's touch on some of the science so we'll clear up some of the questions before we tackle this deeper stuff. So these next few clips are from Roger Spur of Mud Fossils University.
All right, anybody that's ever paid attention to the mud fossils knows that I talk about the veins and the arteries all the time. Now, your artery will come down with fresh red blood, and it has oxygen in it. And it pumps it down, and it goes through all these little blood vessels, and it comes out the other side of the vein and gets sucked back up goes back up to get more oxygen. And that is, and you see this side goes, like they canned them up here. See, there's two that get pumped in, and there's two that come back. There's two that get pumped in, and there's two that come back. Now, you see all these little tiny dots out here? That's the ends. That's where they stop. And there's a whole bunch of little tiny holes, and they go across. And here's what does happen. At the very end, this is a distal phalanges fingertip, exactly like you have here, only it's been deteriorated. And I have another one here that is not deteriorated. These are from giants, and it's just what they are. Now, and this one was the same thing. It didn't blow out at the end like this one did. This one is more deteriorated, and it blew out from, you see those two sides there? You see? That's the that is the arterial side. It blows out because the arteries don't have any clamps, and it tries to push the blood, and they blow out there and out the end. It's the same exact thing as you see here. Now the other side, the vein side, doesn't, because that's being slurped back up to the heart, and they close off here. See the clamp? They clamp off here. See right there. And the other one is up here. Same as they have here, exactly identical, no difference. Now, you see that black thing right there? That's what's called a distal phalanges bone, the tip of the bone. And that is right in the tip of your finger. That's what it is. Now, and that's the pattern that it makes when the bone bleeds out. And that's called, it's a ferrous oxide that bleeds out through stuff, just like this is bleeding out. This is ferrous oxide to iron. It bleeds out through the tissues in the wood, same as it bleeds out in the tissues in this. And this is a mud fossil kidney, and you can see all of the same articulations. You see these boom, 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 boom. They have the exact same things, but you can't see them as well. See them? Boom, 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 boom. Same things. It's in the mud fossils. They are so far superior to the to what they're using for anatomical models. It's amazing. Anyway, let me show you some other stuff. Okay, this is an opalized heart, and these are the little heartstrings of the heart and all the different ventricle walls and everything. Now, you see all these different colors. You see that blue extends all the way around there? That didn't happen by accident. That tissue wants to have a transition metal to stabilize, which causes it to be blue. And I can show you the transition metals, and I will in a second. All right, this is the thing they don't understand well. Carboxylation uses these transition metals to drive things around your body and deliver oxygen and pick up carbon dioxide and glucose and do all the different things that they do to provide your body with nutrients and minerals and flush it of the bad stuff. And that's what's in your blood. And these have to be there in the correct amounts, and they are mined by the bacteria that's in your body. That's how it works. They create enzymes of bacteria, and the enzymes seek out these.
So anyway, I don't have time to put all of his research right here, but he goes on to explain all about transition metals and the ion colors and how we get these veins, literal veins of amethyst, veins of gold, veins of silver, how these transition metals actually settle out during this petrification process and this mineralization process and all of this, and it produces all of these colors that we see in the stones around us. And we mine them. We mine these stones, and we act like we even call them veins. Oh, it's a vein of gold. They found a huge vein of gold, veins of silver, you know. Obviously, part of our subconscious remembers this because we call them veins, and they are literal veins.
You see that? That's from the transition metals that are in some of these specimens that I'm testing. We're running through with the microscopes, and this is what we're seeing inside it. Now there's blood. The black is the vein blood. The red is the arterial blood. That's the blood supply. And then you have your transition metals. And there's gold in here. There's gold, and there's all kinds of different. It's called electrum. And that's what we're finding in these in certain areas. I mean, you don't see them everywhere. Called it the grip skin. Now this is very, very transition. You can see, and it's turned into like crystal. Now this one has not transitioned as much, and this one has the grip skin, and it's still fabric. You see that? These little white fibers. That's they call that keratins, and they're little fibers that are in what they call the grip skin, and that's the tough skin on your fingers and your feet and your toes and on the bottom, the real tough stuff. And this one here has it as well, but you can barely see it. You see there's a pop. By the way, everybody asks about the DNA report, and it's right here. And if you go in, it will tell all about there's 3 specimens we had tested, and it tells all about how they did the extraction and the all of the different things. They had to put it in certain conditions and this and that, and everything was done very, very, very textbook. Deep inside samples, nothing right on the surface. All kinds of negative controls checked out, no problems. All the negative controls came out negative. And it goes down and on and on and on and on and on. So that's what we got as far as that goes. Now, then on, I have a lab report. When I talked to the lab here too. Base pairs normally.
Right, usually 100 to 200 tops, because the DNA is so fragmented because of just the, the degradation.
This is a couple of years ago.
The years and, wear and tear and things like that.
Yeah.
But I was able
Now, this
to,
is a big toe I'm going to show it a
that
bit.
were in that paper that
That's
the
a
group
one.
had success with, and that seemed like the best option, and they, are a
Another one.
mitochondrial DNA primer that will essentially amplify all types of vertebrates.
That's a lung.
So, not just human, but any kind of vertebrate life form.
Some meat.
And
That's
so
a
they're
rock though.
sort of a universal type of fit for
Tendon.
these samples, because we don't know obviously what the samples consist of. So
Bone.
the sequence that came back, and it was roughly
Bone.
for each of these fragments about 100 base pairs. Matched them up in the database.
It's another deteriorated
and they matched
bone.
with the human mitochondrial. There's two regions
Toe.
of the mitochondria. One is called the D, like the letter D is in dog, the D loop. And then the other one, I believe, is for cytochrome B
Finger.
gene. The mitochondria has several different genes that it consists of, but
Finger.
these primers were specific for those areas of the mitochondrial genome. So, so I, considering where we, started a couple months ago,
Apple tuft.
those are nice results to have.
Yeah, that's kind of amazing.
In the PCR.
That was the lab. Now that's a lung right there. You see that? That's the pleura, they call it, of the lung. The ancients used to call it tunica. It wraps your lung, and then you get down into the lobes of the lung. See how it's already red down there. It's just they're everywhere, and they're just not. They just can't get their eyes open, and they can't get their minds open, and they just can't look. So they just ignore it because they're afraid of the result, and the result is going to be kind of devastating for them because they won't pay any attention to this. That just shows how closed their minds are. So it's up to them. It's up to you. Have a nice day.
So like I've talked about before in a lot of other videos, we have a ton of problems with the geological column. We have built error upon error upon error, or maybe deception upon deception and lie upon lie, to get to this place where we have a total misconception of world history and a total misconception of geology. At its core, what the rocks actually are, what the earth is actually made of. Starting with the geological column, they use circular thinking. So they have titled all of the layers of sediment and all of the layers of rock as different ages in the geological column, and they date those layers by the organisms found in them. And then they date the organisms by the layer that they were found in. So that's circular thinking. That's not science. You can't say, oh, I know how old this organism is because it was found in this layer, and then say, oh, but I only know how old that layer is because of this organism I found in it. It's illogical. But we don't have free thought. We're just given a chart. Everybody who goes through the re-education camps are just given this chart and this picture, and it's ingrained in their mind, and this is what it is. But it's not science. There's just one tiny example of that type of thing when we're talking about stalagmites and stalactites. Some geology textbooks tell us that stalagmites and stalactites form at a rate of 1,000 years per cubic inch. Think about that. 1,000 years to get 1 inch. So then they use that false supposition to say, oh, we can date what these caves are and how long this, that, and the other. And it's all fake. None of it's true, because right here is evidence. This is in Vincennes, Indiana. Here are tons of stalagmites and stalactites that are found in a building that is only 40 years old. So in this basement, here's an 11-foot column. There are 5 columns that are 11 feet tall. And no, they did not form over, I don't know how many inches is that, an 11 feet times 1,000 years per inch. No, this is only a 40-year-old building, and this is in its basement, and these columns formed. Again, all of the pictures and all of this information will be in the links below. But my point is, much of what we've been taught in geology is completely false. It's just supposition that has been disproven over and over again. So with this as a basis, now I want to go on and talk about what I'm really here to talk about. And this is Hill of the Skull, Calvary. This is what the Bible records. The Bible records it as the Hill of the Skull, Calvary, where Christ was crucified. Here are just a couple of those Bible verses. Matthew 27:33, they came to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. And then Luke 23:27 through 33, the actual verse is Luke 23:33, and that's all the way down here at the bottom. And this is all about all the people following Jesus and mourning and wailing for him as they were getting ready to kill him. And then the very last verse down here in 33, when they came to a place called the Skull, they crucified him there along with the criminals, one on his right side and the other on his left. In the book of Enoch, chapter 7, he records that there were giants in the world 3,000 ells tall. 3,000 ells tall. Okay, so if you translate that, a lot of people, because that's just too much, they're like, okay, that's too much. There must be some mistranslation. So they dumb it down, and they're like, they come up with other ways, and they rationalize, and they're like, okay, it's just 450 feet, as if that's better, a 450-foot person. But if we just take it literally, like we're meant to take all of the scriptures literally, an ell is an Old English measurement equivalent to 45 inches. If this was indeed the measurement, then that would make the giants just short of 2 miles high. Think about that. Now that seems hard to believe, but look at the pictures I just showed you, and then I'm going to show you a multitude more of these mud fossils, these giants 2 miles high. Enoch is referenced in the Bible repeatedly, and it's stated that he was one of the greatest men that ever walked the earth, closer to God than any other man. In fact, it's said that he didn't see death, that he didn't bodily die, that when his mission was completed, God took him up. Right here, it says in Genesis 5:24, so all the days of Enoch were 365 years. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. And Methuselah lived 187 years and became the father of Lamech. So right down here in Jude 1:14, Enoch, the seventh from Adam, also prophesied about them. And it talks about Enoch being a prophet. It talks about Enoch being very close with God. And so we have the book of Enoch. And it's important to note that we're talking about someone very close to the creation of humankind, of the Hebrew race, the human race. So Enoch was only the seventh generation from Adam, and Enoch was Noah's great-great-great-grandfather. And another thing to note that we've often taken for mythology is the ages, the age ranges, because we're taught about it's progressive evolution, that things are getting better and better, at the same time that they contradict themselves and teach us that the world's in a state of entropy. Completely contradictory statements. We're progressively evolving, matter's progressively evolving. Oh, matter is in a state of entropy, that everything breaks down and decays and rusts and breaks down. Well, we know which is true. Clearly, the world is in a state of entropy. which brings me back to the age thing. We're taught, oh, look how far we've progressed. We're living 70 and 80 years. No, we are fallen. The human gene pool is contaminated, and it's just like us. Everybody's in a state of progeria, which is that disease that causes advanced aging, very rapid aging, and that's what's happening to us. But back in the beginning, the Bible records that lifespans were 800, 900, 1,000 years, and it was very common, like this, 300, 400 years. And that's not mythology. That's our misunderstanding. It's our ego. It's our egocentric sort of philosophy that, oh, we must be the pinnacle of something. Look what we've achieved and where we are. And we cannot accept the fact that no, we are fallen. We are a fallen race, and this world's going to hell in a handbasket. But anyway, my point is that the book of Enoch should, although it's not canon, it should not be disregarded. It's not only historic records, it's also coming from one of the humans who walked the closest with God. And this is what he tells us openly. He tells us what the antediluvian world was like in those days. And all we have to do to confirm it is look around. Just look around. Open your eyes and look at the landscape. Look at the mountains. Look at the rocks. Just look around. Everything around us confirms it. It's true. The Bible is true. And this really isn't a new idea. You could see back in the 1500s and 1600s, 1700s especially, they did a lot of anthropomorphic landscape art, which is showing exactly what we're talking about. And don't think for a second that the elites, that the cabal, the hidden hand doesn't know all about this. Because look at the Noah movie. You want to talk predictive programming? Look at the Noah movie. Remember the rock monsters? They go through, I wish I could put the whole trailer on here. I'd love to play it. Just search Rock Monsters Noah movie trailer. And it tells the whole story. It talks about them coming to Earth as light beings, beings of light, but God got upset with them, and so they were fallen and they were bound in these rock in the mineral kingdom, and God, no matter how much they begged him, wouldn't let them out, and just all of this kind of stuff that we talk about, the fallen angels coming and all of this antediluvian world that is recorded in the records of every culture on planet Earth. And apparently, even though we know that the Vatican secreted away all of the historical records they could during the Crusades and all of that, and the Smithsonian has done the same, obviously the mystery schools have passed this knowledge down to, through these secret societies, because here we have this Noah movie, and when it came out, most Christians were like, what on earth is that? That's not biblical. Where would they have ever gotten that? But in light of what we're talking about here today, clearly they know something we don't know. Clearly they have retained this knowledge from ancient times, and they have passed it down through their mystery schools. But of course, in the Noah movie, they flipped it around like they always do to make it backwards, and they made these watchers, the 200 watchers in Enoch were the fallen angels, but they made the watchers here, these rock monsters, out to be these poor good guys, and that it was the evil humans who had ruined the earth. Remember, Noah was pondering, should he even try to save his family, because it was all the evil humans that needed to be wiped off the earth. But the watchers, the monsters, they were good. So the general theory amongst people following this research is, just like this video says, the earth is a carcass of dead creatures, that the ground was alive. There are things that are still part of ancient history, that are part of the records we have from our ancestors. And then there are practices that we have that seem to be part of the human collective, sort of subconscious. And we're like, where did those come from? And so let's talk about a few of those. We have this notion of Gaia, that Earth itself is alive, that the Earth is alive, that it's a living organism. And what are the stars and what are the planets, really? And Roger seems to agree. He goes so far to suggest in some of his work that large swaths of land can be identified as things like fallopian tubes, and he can watch, mitochondrial DNA and things like that found in the land of the Earth itself. And many of the flat earth researchers, they find as they research that out and they go down that rabbit hole, they come out at those ancient records, the ancient records that say the earth is some sort of being, usually a tortoise, and that the earth isn't a globe, that it's an animal or some sort of living creature. And then if we realize that these transition metals in the body can give us these beautifully colored stones and veins of silver and gold and things like that, it makes you wonder, is it a coincidence that this New Age movement, this occult movement, has taught their followers to take pieces of these fallen ones, to take stones, and they always use crystals and stones in their meditation, and they tune into those frequencies of those bodies, of those fallen ones, which goes back to the same warnings of the ancient biblical times, which is one of God's top 10. It's in the 10 Commandments, not to worship these idols. It was always talking about, the Bible's always talking about these gods of stone, these idols and gods of stone, and that they're dead and gone. Don't worship them, these idols of stone. And it's like, why? It's like, what's the big deal? Who believes a stone is anything? But in light of what we're talking about here, it makes sense. And to see that tradition carried on in the New Age movement, that they use these stones. They use these stones for their meditation. They worship with these stones. And the Bible mentions it too. So there must be some truth to that whole stone thing, because the Bible talked about before Christ came and gave us his Holy Spirit so that we could communicate with God again. The priests of the Old Testament would take a breastplate and they would put 12 different of these gemstones in it to create a harmonic, and they would put this breastplate on, and that would help bridge the gap, you know, from that excommunication that we inherited through the contamination of the gene pool. That's what they used before Christ came. So there's some truth to this frequency thing that is going on with the gemstones. There's so much more I'd love to touch on, but this video is getting really long, so I'm just going to kind of close out with my personal testimony of why my spirit bears witness with this theory. And that's mainly because back when I was a teenager, I had an out-of-body experience, and I did a video about it here. It's a poor quality video. It was one of the first videos I did, and you know, I didn't know what I was doing, but it's my genuine, heartfelt, truthful testimony of what I saw. This is called Life After Death, My NDE Out-of-Body Experience. So it's in this category with the out-of-body experiences. It's also up here in this category with my personal dreams and visions. Right there, it's the one that's got that Bohemian Grove looking picture on my computer screen when I did it. But anyway, what happened at one point in that, I went to hell. I was not saved when I had this. I was not religious and not saved, and we didn't go to church, and I didn't know what was happening. I knew that I had night terrors and that I was tormented. And then this night I got yanked out of my body and I saw hell. And one of the things that I was shown when I was there was I was running and running what felt like on rocky ground, you know, when you're running on like big gravel, like big stone, you're twisting your ankle, and I was running, I was in total terror, it was pitch black, and there was a point in the experience that I realized that I hadn't been running on ground. I had looked down and realized that I was all covered in black, like I was this black being, this darkness, this being of darkness, and the whole ground that I was standing on was like a Holocaust pit, all of these other dark souls. And so the ground was made of these lost souls just like me. And I just fell down on top of the pile. The amount of hopelessness there, I just can't explain it. You'll have to go back and watch this video if you're interested in that kind of thing. But from the time I was a teenager until now, I carried with me this knowledge, this secret thing. And I didn't even tell anybody, you know, that I had an NDE or an out-of-body experience, because I didn't want anyone to think I was crazy. I didn't tell anybody for 20 years. But I carried this with me, this thing about the ground. And then the Lord, I got saved after that, and the Lord began to speak to me about, Holy Spirit began to remove the veil from my eyes, and I could see, I could understand the dimension, and how the dimensions weren't bubbles separate from one another. They were overlaid one on top of each other. So all of us here, where we're at together, we're not all in one dimension. We're in many dimensions, but they're overlaid. The way you can see a bat, we can perceive a bat in our dimension, but a bat is also part of a lower dimension. Although we can perceive that frequency, the bat can perceive infrared frequencies that we can't, but we're overlapped, so part of our dimensions overlap. And likewise, say with a dog or a dolphin, they perceive things in higher frequencies. Dog can hear high-pitched frequencies like a dog whistle that we can't, because they're also part of a higher frequency dimension, but they're overlapped with the dimension we're in, so we can perceive them and they can perceive us. But we're not necessarily in the same dimension per se. And by overlapping these dimensions, all of these kingdoms, we have the mineral kingdom, then we have the plant kingdom, then we have the animal kingdom, and we're taught that's the end of it. But God showed me it's not. Then there's the celestial kingdom above the animal kingdom, which is the resurrection we are trying to attain. So these fallen ones that go into the ground, they become this low frequency mineral kingdom. And then the plant kingdom is the next step up, and it draws all of the light out of the mineral kingdom. It's the resurrection process. The kingdoms layered on top of each other, the dimensions layered on top of each other is the resurrection process. So the roots of the plant kingdom go down into the mineral kingdom, and they take everything that's good, all of the nutrition, which is the light. It's the light. They're bringing up the light, the protons, the electrons. They're bringing that energy up. So it's resurrecting all that can be saved. All that is light will be drawn up into the plant kingdom. And then we in the animal kingdom, we consume the plant kingdom. So then we take in all that is light from all the kingdoms below us, the mineral kingdom and the plant kingdom. And what is waste comes back out of us and goes back into the earth. So when they say you are what you eat, you really are what you eat. And that's why now that our system is so out of whack and we are just torturing these animals and mass producing them and eating them. And then we all have that, we have that cellular memory in us. We eat that and then we feel depressed and we feel, all of the heaviness from those spirits, because things are the whole food chain, the whole kingdom, all of the dimensions. The Bible says all of creation groans together, awaiting the return of the Lord, awaiting that redemption when things are set right again. And then we continue on to be these celestial beings, which is what I'm always talking about in my video about the resurrection through Jesus Christ. That you need an addition. You need to be more than just an animal. You need that addition of the Holy Spirit. You're a triune being, not just a caricature or something. And to get that repair and start that process to move from animal to celestial kingdom, you need the Holy Spirit. You need to receive Jesus Christ, an actual energy, an actual light into your soul. And that's what the whole book is about. So anyway, that's why knowing that the mineral kingdom is absolutely made up, both literally and dimensionally and physically and metaphysically and all of that by these fallen ones, and everything that is left into the lower dimensions, into the lower frequencies that are eventually flatlining as all of the light is being drawn out and resurrected. Okay, then the next thing that happened, this all happened long before Mud Fossils or Roger Age of Disclosure. This was 30 years ago for me. And then, what was it, like 10 years ago or so, Google Earth came out. And I saw, people make those videos. They were all excited when Google Earth came out. And I saw this video of this giant Indian head on the earth. And I almost threw up. I had such a flood of revelation that I almost threw up. I was sick. I had a sick feeling that I realized, oh my Lord, it is. I see it. And I had this revelation of what I'm telling you right now. So praise God that after all of this time, now there is a movement. There is a movement, and there are people researching this and putting their life's energy towards revealing this. And I am 100% behind them You know, we all make mistakes. I don't even agree with everything I've probably said on my videos if I went back. I've grown so much in the last 10 years. And, you know, I may not agree with every single thing that's on on all of their videos, but they're on to something. They're on to something, folks, and we need to listen to them and we need to learn from them. And also the flat earth movement. We need to listen to them. If you look at their research, they are on to something. Now, this is not a flat earth video, but I'm telling you, this earth, this place where we live, is most certainly not what they have told us it is. Our lifetime. I love you guys. God bless you.